Great.
Okay, great. Good evening, everyone. The school committee is reconvening from its executive session. And before we start our meeting, as a preliminary matter, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Meena Bharat, Chair of the Hopkinton School Committee. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Jen Devlin,
Yes.
Amanda Fargiano,
Yes.
Meg Tyler.
Yes.
Staff members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Dr. Carol Cavanaugh,
Yes.
Susan Rothamick,
Yes.
Jen Parson.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Good evening again. And this open meeting of the Hopkinton Public School is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of the COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we are complying with the executive order that suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. All members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The executive order, which you can find posted with agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely as long as the public body makes provisions through adequate alternative means to ensure interested members of the public are provided reasonable access to the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will feature public comment. For this meeting, the Hopkinton Public School Committee is convening via Zoom app as posted on the town's website as well as the school website, excuse me, identifying how the public may join. Additionally, the meeting may also be broadcast by HCAM through one or many of its channels or platforms. For Zoom meetings, please note that this meeting is being recorded and that some attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that others may be able to see you and take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. About meeting materials and packets. All supporting materials that have been provided to members of this body are available on the town's as well as school's website via the web meeting calendar unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless I note otherwise. Now for some meeting business ground rules. We are now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I'll introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will invite board members to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. If members wish to engage in colloquy with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. After members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment as follows. The chair will first ask members of the public who wish to speak to identify their name and addresses only. I believe this may not apply to us tonight because we have sought public comment through email and text. This may be something we look to do in future meetings. Finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. And now, for the first item that we are ready to take on the agenda, the Pledge of Allegiance. I request all members to please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The next item on the agenda are recognitions. Business Professional Leaders of America State Conference 2020 student results. Dr. Cavanaugh.
Yes, I just wanted to recognize Mr. Scott and the Business Professionals of America. One of the things that we are very proud of is the growth of that program and the sort of victories that our students have been able to attain. If you have access to the packet, you can see that many of our students have earned first, second, and third place standings in so many different areas, everything from marketing to computer modeling to economics. So many successes for our Building Professionals of America. So I did want to recognize them.
That's excellent, Dr. Kavanaugh. It's wonderful to hear such good news in this environment that we are in. Did other members have any comments? Great. Congratulations to all the students and Mr. Scott and all the members who conduct this program. Thank you, Dr. Kavanaugh. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, it's time for public comments. I'm excited to say that we received a record number of public comments. It was exciting to see public participate in this manner in school committee business. So I want to thank each and every member who brought forth their voice. The school committee had access to all of that. The entire school committee has had access to all the information. Of course, some of it has come in a little late, so you may not have had the opportunity, but we are going to request Ms. Devlin to summarize all the comments that we have received in the past week or so. Ms. Devlin.
Thank you, Mina. Okay, so Nancy Kavanaugh forwarded a summary to me of the correspondence she has received over the last several days. So I'll read off what she sent to me. It says, I received or was copied on 37 emails expressing support for the change in calendar to eliminate April break and allow school to finish earlier. I had one person reach out to ask about having April break eliminated and still have kids attend until the end of June. There were 2 parents who were in support of this plan for all except for current seniors who would not be impacted by the late ending date for school. And both parents expressed concern for the emotional toll this has had on the senior class. There were 3 concerns about transportation policy, which I'll read in a moment. And then there was one parent who inquired about a refund for school busing fees for the 2019 to 2020 school year. So let me pull up the transportation emails here. So we heard from 3 community members about our review of the transportation policy this evening. The first was from Chrissy Creswell, and she wrote, good afternoon. I am writing about my concern on the new transportation policy. After attending the committee meetings and being able to express my concerns, I for once felt that I was finally heard. I was hopeful some changes would be made regarding the safety at bus stops. Upon reviewing the new policy, I see nothing has changed. I feel as if our concerns fell on deaf ears yet again. I am in utter fear of the new school year. I'm a single mom that works for a school bus transportation company. I am at work before my daughter even wakes up. I was lucky enough this year to have a family member that could drive her to school every day. I do not have that option next year. It states in the policy it is up to the parents to safely get students to the bus stops. I ask you how you can do that to single working parents. What is going to happen to my daughter next year? I am supposed to make her walk down Lumber Street with no sidewalks around a blind corner in the pitch black of the morning. Nothing is going to change until a student gets hurt, and that is sad. I was born and raised in this town. I went to school here. I was beyond happy to have the chance to have my daughter in such an amazing school system. I am truly heartbroken at the complete disregard shown by the bus company and the superintendent on the safety of my daughter and all the students in this town. I also feel if the stops were to change, it would greatly cut down on the pickup and drop-offs at all of the schools. This would also cut back on a lot of the traffic in the morning. I have spoken with many parents that agree if they had a safe bus stop, they would not be driving their students to and from school. Again, I thank you for listening to me. I beg you to please reconsider things before a student is hurt or killed trying to get to the school. The second transportation email is from Suzanne Creswell. And she wrote, good day. I am writing in response to tonight's transportation discussion. I am feeling very frustrated at the moment because I feel as though we have not been listened to as a group regarding safety issues with bus stops. I'm very angry, as a matter of fact, that this is not being taken seriously. It is not in the best interest of our children or the town to leave such wishy-washy policy in place. Who is the deciding factor, and how exactly will it be decided if stops are safe or not? I was insulted and furious earlier in the school year that the superintendent had actually suggested that my granddaughter walk through a wooded lot and trespass through our neighbor's property to get to her stop. Obviously, if walking in the street was a safe option in the dark, those ridiculous suggestions would never have been made. I was quite respectful at the previous meeting and was not going to bring this up, hoping for a reasonable result. We were not even given an option to file an appeal, and those who did and were refused were given unclear and inconsistent reasons. My question is, if we were treated in this manner, how many others have been treated similarly? This is disrespectful, unprofessional, and unacceptable. I am incredibly disappointed that the committee is moving forward with policy that continues to endanger children and leaves decisions to be made with no set guidelines. And the last communication we received regarding the transportation policy is from Margaret Post. And she writes, "Dear elected members of the school committee, I hope this finds you and your families well during these challenging times. I read through the transportation policy in the packet for tonight's meeting. Please accept this email as my public comment. The policy as it currently reads is not going to address the issues our group has raised. There is too much space left for the discretion, interpretation, and arbitrary decision-making of district administrators. The policy does not address appeals, the primary issue that our group raised with serious concerns about our kids' safety. This needs to be in the policy. Without any policy guidance on how to address safety appeals, it is left to the discretion of administrators. Our experience has shown that the appeal process has failed the majority of people who appealed transportation decisions in the last 2 years. There also needs to be a clearer definition of bus stop locations that are considered safe and centralized for the same reason of clarity and explicit direction to district administrators. Third, the policy seems like it will work well enough for people who live in areas where there are sidewalks and safe places to pull over and park to wait for the bus. However, if 80% of Hopkinton is on rural roads, then this policy fails to adequately address the needs of the majority of the community. I'm sorry that I do not have more time to offer a more detailed response, but I would be happy to speak with any of you following tonight's meeting about our concerns." And that's all I have for community input, unless anything was received between when we started and now. Nope, that's all I have.
Thank you, Jen. I think we'll also have time towards the end of the meeting. Hopefully, Nancy will be able to join if there are some things additional that she would like to read out. That may be another opportunity to do that. Again, I'd like to thank all members of public, irrespective of your perspective. Thank you for raising your voice and expressing your viewpoint. It's important for us in this process. And I hope you continue to engage throughout this period when we are doing most of our meetings remotely, but also once we are back physically, that you'll continue to stay engaged in what's going on in our schools and share your thoughts. So you can tell I'm excited with public engagement here. Okay, moving on to the next item on the agenda, reports, FY21 budget update, Ms. Rothermick and Dr. Kavanaugh.
Okay, would you like me to share my screen?
Please do.
Okay. Okay, how is that on your end? Can you see that very well? The slides? Great. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
You want to start? You want me to start?
No, I guess you can get started and then I'll just kind of jump in. How's that?
Okay.
All right, sorry, Carol, do you want to put that in present mode?
Sure.
So it's just a little bit bigger.
Whoops. There we go. Is that better?
Okay. Just to give everyone an idea basically of where we are, because as everyone knows, things are changing daily, hourly. It's an incredible amount of information. that both the public and the school system is trying to digest and maneuver around. So we'll go to the next slide. So as you know, all the school buildings were closed until April 6th. That was our original target date. We went through, we cleaned and sterilized all the buildings, and education moved forward to prevent regression. Then, as information continued to change, all the school buildings were then closed until May 4th. We were able to put the buildings in unoccupied mode, trying to save on our utilities, and the switch of education went to remote instruction of new material. And we're still in this question of how long will this last? And the answer still is out there. We have discussions with the state almost daily, if not, every other day, daily, on all avenues of education and what it means for us as we are now, what it will mean if things continue to change. So there are many, many unanswered questions out there that we're trying to maneuver.
Yeah, and I guess, as we talk about the how long will this last, I think some of the things that you'll see in this presentation tonight are really sort of predicated on, do you go back to school on May 4th or do you not? Because that's going to be pivotal, I think, in making some of the decisions for us around budget for next year.
So some of the things, and early on, we had already been in discussion with directors, building principals, director of building and grounds, to be reviewing their FY20 budget. So this is the time of year where we really start to drill down, look at what you have as open purchase orders, make sure that you're getting those invoices in and really trying to pull everything up and have a clean year end. Well, of course, everything changed when all of this started to happen. And so the message became very different. Now that the buildings have been closed for a little while, and now that we've changed education from preventing regression to remote instruction, what do our budgets look like? Because this is not something that obviously anybody had budgeted for. So to give an idea of some of the budget impacts that are out there, athletics, you still have a discussion. If we come back, the MIAA is in favor of student athletes having some type of experience between May 4th and the end of the year. So what does that look like for a shortened season? So you have a question on the salary side for both the coaches' stipends and the expenses. To a degree, you need to get ready for that season, because come May 4th, if we are back in school, indeed tryouts are happening and you need to have your supplies and at least be ready to open the season. So some spending does happen, but not all of it. So there again are a lot of questions around what does that look like. Day substitutes, again, what does that look like? Whether we come back, whether we don't come back. Overtime is another question in terms of salary. And then again, on the expense side, special ed and homeless transportation, as a for instance, how many days are we looking at? And again, utilities. So these are all things that are being examined and discussed, and really kind of getting a handle on what if.
Yeah, and maybe a very good example, and I know Mrs. Rothermick has already spoken to this, but the MIAA really does have plans for a season that would run from May 4th to June 27th. And so, if that season gets up and running, then all of those athletic stipends have to be thought about like in a prorated kind of basis. So we don't know what that dollar amount is. I've gone a long way to say we really don't know a lot of the dollar amounts that you'll see in this presentation.
So in addition to the operating budget, the other piece to the equation is revenue in our revolving accounts. Preschool tuition has been impacted for half of March and April. There would be no tuition. Athletic fees, again, is an impact. School building use, no one is allowed to use our buildings. All of these accounts are used to offset the operating budget. And then, of course, school lunch. Now, school lunch is a self-sustaining program. We've been unable to sell any lunches, obviously, as the school is closed down. So that is another unique situation. So all of these revenue impacts the operating budget. I apologize. Sorry. Welcome to the new world.
That's right. We saw your rescuer go right behind you. I think he's got it.
I think this is to be expected, and I'm sure our kids and teachers are experiencing this as well.
Mhm.
It's part of what life is right now, and
That's right.
if you don't smile and move on, we're all in this.
Absolutely. Please continue when you're ready.
Okay. So moving back, getting back into the budget impacts, just looking at salary. So for instance, right now, there is $171,000 of salary budgeted for spring sports. So, and this 171,000 at this time of year is actually what is charged to the revolving account. Now, again, as I said earlier, the MIA does have plans if we are to go back in school to give our student athletes some experience between now and the end of the year. So again, that can be a plus or it can be a minus. We don't know. Day subs available in the budget right now is $45,000. If we were to open on May 4th, using the normal history, in other words, what we've been seeing and experience of what is being charged to those budget accounts each payroll period, we would end in a small deficit of $9,300. However, you have to throw a caveat to that in that if we do open on May 4th, what if teachers and staff are not prepared to come back? What if their childcare is not open and running again? What if their child's school is not open and running again? So there are a lot of ifs to that 9,300. Would that really hold true, or would it be higher? It is difficult to say. Overtime, as it stands right now in the budget, we have a small deficit of $2,300. If we were to open again, if we ended up having an expanded sanitation, we could result in another $12,000 deficit. So these, again, are variables that, without further information, it's very difficult to say where we will land with these items. On the expense side, again, athletics. So the spring season could be another plus or minus 67,000. So if we have the spring season, we would spend that 67,000 and be still on budget, but we would spend that. But if we don't have a spring season, we would be saving 67,000 in expenses. Transportation, special ed transportation and homeless. Again, what are the number of days that we will be using to calculate what is spent and what is saved? So those are plus or minus 50,000 or plus or minus for 20,000. And utilities. Utilities is a very big unknown. What we have paid in the budget right now is through February. So typically our invoices come in the mid-month for the month previous. So in March, towards the end of March is when we really shut down those buildings. We won't even have those invoices until the middle of May. So what that savings will be is hard to say. I would say that we obviously will have a savings. And it is also coupled with the fact that we've actually had a very warm winter as well. So either way, we will be showing a savings with utilities. So not including the utilities, the potential impact for the expense side could be plus or minus 137,000. And if you add in utilities, that could be significantly higher. looking through the revenue side, so preschool tuition, right now we know that March and April is lost revenue. And May is another potential lost revenue depending on that decision. So we have a potential of looking at 44,000 of lost revenue for the preschool revolving account. The athletics, the spring season, those sport fees, prior year experience, the spring sports brought in about 163,000 in fees. School building use, again, the buildings are closed, so we are not collecting any money. Prior year, this time during closure, we collected about $66,000. So our lost revenue plus potential is another $273,000. And again, these revolving funds we use to offset the operating budget. So that is something that we would have to look to cover.
Yeah, and for anyone who's watching at home, if you're confused about that school building use, people come and use our facilities and pay us to use those facilities, just to be clear on what that sort of line item is.
And again, getting back to school lunch, and again, this is unique. The school lunch program is self-sustaining. So March and April without any lunch sales is lost revenue of $200,000. But on the flip side, we have not been buying food that we would have used during that time either. So food costs that we've saved is $80,000. So looking at our potential loss just for March and April is $120,000. Right now, the revolving account has a cash balance of 70. Now, by law, we cannot bring that cash balance, well, two things. When you bring that cash balance to a deficit, that has an effect on the town side. It has an effect on free cash. So if we were to just continue and run that so that the lunch account ended with a $50,000 deficit, that would be a $50,000 deficit to free cash on the town side. So that's something that typically, well, I won't say typically, we don't do. So we always make sure that our revolving accounts end in a positive number for that reason. So, you know, it's hard to say, you know, there are just so many decisions out there that we are waiting on the state to let us know. But we're watching these numbers closely. And as things become more clear and decisions are made, it gets better and better. And again, the directors are reviewing all of their accounts. They're touching base with me when they have time. Of course, the real priority for them this week has been switching to online learning. So some are getting to me as quickly as they can. So there's a lot that's up in the air.
Ms. Rothermick, are you ready for some questions on the FY20 update?
Sure.
Is this the time?
Sure.
So just want to open it up to members if anyone has questions. Yeah, please go ahead, Amanda.
Sorry, I'm not sure how we weigh in, but so what general question, Susan, we hear a lot, and those of us who are in private business positions where we're looking at support from the federal government, we're deep in the weeds on a lot of the federal government supports right now. And we hear a lot about like the Families First Care Act and so forth. Does any of that apply to support for our workers? So like the extended leave for people who have to stay home and care for kids because their schools are closed and that sort of thing. Does any of that apply to us or no?
Well, it does. So for instance, an extended leave, if someone needed to stay home because they needed to care or could not provide that remote instruction, if you will, and they needed to take a leave, there is a benefit in terms of what the employer would pay. So yes, some of those do qualify for our staff as well. Yes.
In most, I think, of the coronavirus programs from the federal government, it seems that the federal government is covering that expense for many of these benefits. Not, it might pass through us, but many of them are covered by the government federal funds, right?
That's correct, but at the same time, it's less than their full pay.
Right, correct. For extended leave, yeah. Okay. And I might have missed what you said, but what happens at the end of the year if we end up with if we're able to save, if we don't open and we are able to save a lot in, say, utilities? Is that an amount of money that can be used to offset next year's budget? I know we typically, I think, don't do that, but is there any mechanism in these unique times for us to work with the municipal government in Hopkinton to talk about how we alleviate the pain for next year?
Well, no, there is no carryover, and you can't work with the town side. You just can't. It's a 1-year appropriation. That's it. But what we will be looking to do is try to save our revolving accounts where we will be losing all of that revenue. So we will probably have to move money that was originally charged to some of these revolving accounts into the operating budget. So as of, for instance, the preschool tuition, the staff that were charged to that preschool revolving account, we may have to pull back and charge that to the operating. Because again, we're looking to those same revolving accounts to be used as an offset for the FY21 budget.
Yeah.
So if we run those accounts into the deficit, they won't be available as we've already budgeted for the FY21 budget either. So we'll look to pull the expenses into the operating budget for these accounts where we have savings. They'll be used to cover where we have revenue losses.
Okay. So just to be clear, so any unspent funds would roll into the town free cash?
It would just go back to the general fund. Yes.
And then what is the provision? I mean, again, these are unique times. I mean, this is not typically how we'd ever be able to do business, but is there no provision for us to, at a special town meeting or through some special appropriation, have some of that be reappropriated back to the schools?
Well, what happens is it goes back into the general fund, and the FY21 budget is what is left out there for the next town meeting. So, and the FY21 budget at this point in time is completely up in the air. So there isn't anything that's going, you can't say I've saved $100,000, so I want that in my FY21 budget. It just doesn't work that way.
Okay, because our town meeting is currently, what is it? It's at the end of June, or
The end of June.
so our year will nearly be closed. This year we'll have a very good idea of where we are for 2019-20.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Sorry to ask these basic questions, but I think people do want to know. It's hard to understand if you're not in the weeds how this all works.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line is your appropriation for this fiscal year is it. You don't get to save it in a piggy bank for money that has not been spent. The community gets a say every year on an annual basis at town meeting what they're going to give to education.
Yeah.
So if we say, like I said, if we saved $100,000 this year, the community still gets to decide whether we get that 100,000. I mean, if it's even available, because again, we're only a department
Correct.
of the whole town. So that money is not guaranteed to go to the schools.
So, Ms. Rothermick, just to clarify, so you're talking about the hypothetical 100,000, that it would go back to the general fund and available to anybody who is able to exhibit the need in the town, right?
Well, as you know, when we're looking at the FY21 budget, we're looking at all funding sources, which would include the general fund, and not just for the school, for all departments.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
Amanda, did you have more questions?
I think I'm good. Thanks.
Okay. Does anyone else have other questions they want to bring forth? Okay. How about Professor Tyler? I can't see you here. I see you now. Okay. I have a couple of questions for you, Ms. Rothmick. One is around transportation. I know there's still some conversations going on that front. When can we expect an update on that front? And any potential savings or what have you?
We're in the very, very early stages of negotiating with our vendor. So all districts across the state are looking to have conversations with their vendor. And then we will look to move forward together. And any negotiations that are done are then need to be reviewed and would be approved. So, but I would say that is not forthcoming immediately.
Okay. Thank you for continuing to work on that. We
And
certainly,
I'll just add one.
please,
If I
Dr.
may,
Kavanaugh.
Just
Yes,
add one
please.
thing. We are still currently paying the bus contract, just so people understand that, our legal counsel has asked us to do that even while we are in the process of negotiations.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Kavanaugh. I certainly look forward to an update on that front. The other question I have for you is related to grants and gifts. If there is any mechanism, if you're not able to utilize any of it in this upcoming, through end of June, are we able to carry that forward? Are there some conversations going on at the state level to give us more time to be able to utilize that or pay for those services, but be able to get the delivery of the services into next year? Anything you can share on that front, please?
Sure. First, you can never pay for services not rendered. So you can't pay now for services that you won't receive until the next year. That's just the law.
Okay.
Grants, a lot of our grants are 2-year grants. So we would be able to roll forward and use unused balances in what would be considered year 2. And the grant, in terms of the actual deadline to utilize the funds, those will not change. But again, as we look to what has been budgeted for within the grant, we're pretty close to being able to expend it. There are some discussions on what does it look like now that it could be different, instead of, for instance, a presenter coming in for professional development. What does that look like now that it's different? But the deadline didn't change. We just need to relook at the budget in terms of what the grant can be utilized for.
I was just wondering, where there are extensions of deadlines and a lot of flexibility that is being shown in different places. At a time when we know that we will have a difficult year next year, it doesn't make sense that we have to figure out a way to spend the money right now in a hurry in some instances. So I wonder if collectively school districts are championing to request some extensions in certain cases.
Grants will not be extended. I can tell you that from the state and federal government, grants will not be extended. That said, there's very purposeful planning. So it's not a firestorm spend. It's very purposeful in making sure that any spending that is being done with a grant moves the district forward, making sure that we're keeping an eye not only to this fiscal year, but to next fiscal year. So it's there is very careful planning in terms of how those grants are spent, but there won't be any change in deadlines.
What about any gifts that we may be receiving? Are they typically part of a revolving account? How do those work?
Yeah, any gifts that we would receive are part of a revolving account. Revolving accounts just roll forward.
Okay, thank you. One last question is on any kind of relief that we can provide to families in our town whether with regard to fees with bus or what have you. I've heard from a couple of folks who have expressed some concern. And so just wondering if there is anything we are proactively offering or able to offer with regard to any relief with hardships that folks are facing. The unemployment numbers, as we know, are not looking good at all.
Right. I know, for instance, we encourage people to reach out in terms of transportation. We're more than willing to work with families. So that would be the message to anyone that is out there. The other hardship that we're seeing are people that have unpaid or negative lunch balances, and they feel like they are unable to pay off those balances. There's the program, the Lunch Heroes, that has begun to help give these families relief, that they don't have just one more debt hanging over their heads. So in all cases, we encourage families to reach out to us.
Great, and I hope we are able to provide a plan for them.
Mhm.
Thank you, Ms. Rothermick. Is there more to your presentation, Ms. Rothermick?
No, that's
No.
it.
Okay. Any other comments, last minute thoughts? No? Okay, great. We will move on to the next item on the agenda. Thank you so much, Ms. Rothermick. And it was fun to hear your dog.
I literally have a babysitter over there keeping them quiet. So I'm going to mute myself now.
The next item on the agenda, our superintendent's report, Dr. Kavanaugh.
All right. So I'll kind of zip through very quickly. You can see again on my front page, I have our new normal. If you go to any of our schools and playgrounds and buildings, it's a very distinct absence of children. And so on my next page, I think I was very careful to choose some of our springtime photos from last year. In that top photo, you can see our 8th graders, and they are all enjoying New York City. And you can see Kenya Day and kids at the Hopkins School. And we really do miss the kids is the point here. And I so sincerely wish that we would be back in school very shortly. I'm not sure that that is the case, but these are very atypical times. And so just, kind of a little shout out to the kids that we miss them, and we are grateful that they are coming to their remote instruction. So I have a very quick coronavirus update for you. Some information about remote instruction, some information on the Student Opportunity Act, and then a little bit of dialogue about April vacation. And I know that's probably a kind of a hot ticket item for us at this meeting this evening. Our return to school date remains May 4th, and that is the guidance that we've gotten from Governor Charlie Baker, and that is sort of where we still are. And as you saw in Mrs. Rothermick's presentation on the budget, in that same way that it's impacting budget, it's impacting teaching and learning, but this is the date that we have to sort of believe in right now. Could it be extended? Absolutely. One of the things I think we've heard at the state level is that our governor would like to approach this in ways that are incremental. And while I certainly respect that, I think that we're getting closer and closer to May 4th. So I think we need to kind of think about next steps for the Hopkinton Public Schools. Our remote instruction went live last Monday. And from all that I've seen, I mean, we've had a couple of technology glitches, or we've had a couple of those moments where we've had difficulty, getting kids into sessions or whatever. But by and large, I am amazed at what our teachers and our tech department and our principals, and even our paraprofessionals, our custodians, everyone in our system. It's been really great to see all the things that they've done. Our custodians have opened the buildings so the parents could drive up and get a brown paper bag with paperback books in them. It's been monumental what's been accomplished in just a couple of weeks. So I think remote instruction is really doing, it's great. I mean, I don't know that we could have ever done this unless we were in pretty dire circumstances. So kudos to everyone on the inside who are working so hard. At our last meeting, people had questions about the junior prom. Officially, the junior prom has been moved to November 14th. I believe all junior parents received a letter earlier this week from Mr. Bishop. November 14th was the chosen date because it doesn't conflict with other things. So for example, SATs or other standardized testing in the fall. And it was a date that the same venue had open for us. So it was an easy switch for us to make. And I'm glad that our juniors, even if they can't have a springtime prom, will have a lovely autumn prom this year. People have been asking about MCAS. The bill number for MCAS is Bill 4616. I was talking to Carolyn Dykema about this, and she has shared with me that we're still a little bit caught up in the Mass State Legislature. I don't know if things got resolved this afternoon or not, but I think what people can probably count on is there will be that reprieve for grades 3 to 8 at least. One of the big questions out there, I believe, is whether or not there'll still be a competency determination for students in the 12th grade who have not yet passed MCAS. So that's a question that's out there. There will certainly be more to come. And part also of Bill 4616 is the Student Opportunity Act, which I'll get to in a little bit. As I said last time, AP tests are going to be conducted remotely through the College Board. Families who might be in need of any food assistance should reach out to our food services director, Michelle Babin, and you can see her email address is mbabin@hopkinton.k12.ma.us. April vacation may be voted on by the committee tonight. It's certainly something that we're thinking about. If we eliminate April vacation, we'll be moving the school year back by 4 school days and quickly continuing the momentum we've established with our remote instruction. Anyone who is interested in some school-related broadcasts, HCAM is putting some of those together. I know that last week, Mr. Bishop, Mr. Keller, Mrs. Barat, and I were all interviewed by HCAM. So if you're interested in seeing any of those productions, tune right in. And I would also like to just finally remind parents, our fields are closed. And so they're locked, they are sort of off limits to kids. And I know that we still have kids who are using them. So I would just ask that parents please try to kind of honor that request that our fields are closed and students should not be using them. When we get to that place where the virus is starting to peak, I would be very nervous about students on those fields. All right, so let's just talk a little bit about remote instruction. As I said, we launched the new curriculum on Monday, April 6th, and I would just say no matter what a family situation might be, and we have heard from many families, and we are certainly empathetic that folks are working from home, folks are working outside of the house. Sometimes people have multiple children who are all signing on to different devices at different times. So whatever your family situation might be, we would just encourage you to try to stay in touch with teachers and fellow students using our virtual classroom connections. We just feel like it's really, really good for children to have those connections to their classrooms and to their peers. Along the same lines, we're encouraging families to establish balance. There are some folks who have said, well, we would love more. And we have put out a few enrichment opportunities. Tomorrow morning, we'll be sending out some STEAM information that comes from our STEAM coordinator, Mrs. Valerie Lichtansky. And so, there are things out there for people who need a little bit less and people who need a little bit more. The platforms that we have chosen to deliver instruction, we've tried to do things with some consistency to, mitigate that technology angst for families. We have chosen Zoom, Google Meet, and Seesaw. Those are platforms that we are using to deliver instruction with some regularity. And the principals are reporting that attendance this week has been really excellent. So I want to thank families for getting to us. Our special educators and related service providers are delivering services with the very best attempts that they can given the remote settings and what those afford us. And I will honestly tell you that I think, looking at what our special education teams are doing, it's pretty exceptional. Every school has its own unique schedule. So parents, I think, are finding, kind of getting adjusted to the high school schedule, the middle school schedule, Hopkins, and the 2 elementaries. Parents, this one might be very important. Parents who are very, very worried about colleges and college admissions and what colleges are going to be seeing for their, freshmen, sophomores, juniors who are in high school right now and who are developing college transcripts that will be eventually sent to colleges. Please remember that colleges are telling us now publicly that they are expecting to see pass-fail grades. They won't be surprised if they see that for the spring of 2020. At this point, we also have no idea what we'll be doing about high school GPA. That is certainly under review. And so we've heard from several parents about that. And just so you know that we are assessing and refining the processes as we go along. I mean, we just launched on Monday. From what we can tell, things have gone very, very well this week. But like with anything that's brand new, when you're chartering new waters, you make turns as you're going. And so that would be our plan as we continue with remote instruction, whether that is until May 4th or even longer. Right. Special education remote instruction. The Department of Elementary and Secondary Education gave us some guidance. And I think the three big pieces of guidance that we received were, the first was to focus on staffing and resources, focus your staffing and resources on delivery. They didn't want people getting all bogged down with the IEP team processes and things like that. The first and foremost job was making sure that kids were being educated. The second one, which is sort of a subsection of the first, is to really take a look at the students' grids and focus on what kids' greatest needs would be when you were delivering remote special education services. And finally, the last thing that Russell Johnston, who is the director of special education at the state level, kept underscoring was collaboration is key. Just keep reaching out to families. That's probably the most important thing that we will be doing through this whole process in terms of special education. So what did we do when we put all of our pieces together? We are using a variety of resources, several electronic platforms. Our liaisons and related service providers are addressing the existing IEP services, and we are doing that remotely to the very greatest extent possible. As Betsy DeVos has told us, any kind of remote instruction in terms of special education is absolutely better than none at all. And I think we are doing much better than some. I think we are delivering very good services at this point. Our liaisons and related service providers are expected to collaborate and populate what we are calling the distant learning plans weekly. So every week, kids in our district have a district learning plan, and the liaisons and the student service providers are filling those in and ensuring that parents know what they can expect during the week. Our liaisons and our related service providers are collaborating with classroom teachers to the greatest extent possible so that they're out there supporting classroom instruction. Dr. Zaleski has put together something that is called the launch page. And all of our related service providers and counselors are populating the student service launch page. So if there are families who have needs, wondering what it is that I can work on at home with my child, is there a resource for me because I just need something more? As they look at the launch page, I think that they will be able to find things that are appropriate from posted by different providers and for students at different grade levels. And finally, our liaisons, our related service providers, our team chairs, our out-of-district coordinators, our highest expectation is that they will be in communication all the time with families. And I'm hoping that those are the things that families with students who have special needs are finding consistently. All right, moving along to the Student Opportunity Act. The Student Opportunity Act, as we have said frequently, is really about closing the gap.
Dr. Kavanaugh, if I may, just open it up because we're moving on to the next topic on the agenda. I wondered if anyone had any comments or questions on the section related to the COVID-19 update and all that is going on in our schools.
Can I just say what a fabulous job the district is doing with digital and remote learning? I cannot tell you how impressed I am by how quickly the teachers were able to learn how to use Zoom this effectively. So bravo. I think it's just heartening to see so much construction during a very destructive time. So kudos to all of the administrators and teachers who've just been doing a great job. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And you know what? I would like to also add that without our tech people, our
Yes.
teachers and paraprofessionals and administrators wouldn't be doing the great job that they are, maybe. So just a shout out to the tech people. I can tell you that last week they conducted session after session after session with sort of an open door policy, and it was great. So
Yes,
thank you.
I
We
admit to
appreciate
saying kudos to Mr. Ghosh for spearheading all of this. So thank you.
Yes. And thanks to Dr. Zaleski and the special educators and all of our building principals. I can't say that enough. I am so proud of everything that's happening in this district.
I'm pretty sure Ms. Parsons has been very busy with the curriculum lead and looking at this and looking at impacts on the fall. I'm sure the work is just beginning. So I think a shout out to you, Jen, for all the work I'm sure you're doing.
Thank you.
Yes, I've
Great.
lost you. I
Well,
tried to put you on the screen.
yeah.
I wanted to say one other thing about the high school, just a shout out for the community that, and I don't know about other schools, so maybe Dr. Kavanaugh, you can weigh in on this, but Mr. Bishop is holding an open Zoom office hours of a sort on Tuesday afternoons at 2 o'clock. So if parents have questions about things like GPA or the prom, which has now been addressed, or graduation or whatever, a lot of those questions came up this week. And it's a nice opportunity to ask Mr. Bishop directly where we are in our thinking on a number of different things, or to ask about anything going on at the high school. So Tuesdays at 2 o'clock, he has sent out an email link for that meeting. So I'd encourage people to take advantage.
Yes, I think some of our other building administrators are doing that. And I was on the phone this morning with Mrs. Benbenick, who did share that last week when they had their sort of open door afternoon, they had one sixth grade student who joined them and regaled them with magic tricks. So anything people can bring to those sessions to sort of, foster that humanity, we love it.
It's great. Any other comments? I also want to echo what Meg and Amanda had said. I was also, looking through the emails and the commentary that we received for the public comment, the public participation. Almost everyone who wrote to us spoke highly of the experience that the kids are having right now with regard to the instruction and how it has helped bring some structure and some meaning almost to the days, which everyone is finding very hard. So I think just that message that emerged from these parents who, are varied, experiences. There are some who have 3 kids. There are some who have a single child. There are some where kids are in elementary, middle, high school. So you see an entire spectrum of people speaking of how much they appreciate the work that is going on and how much they appreciate the online work that's going on. I think everybody understands it's a challenge, and I think you also underscored very well, Dr. Kavanaugh, that we need to find a balance, and that you're encouraging families to reach out to the teachers if they're finding it hard. That's your first point of contact. So I think we just want to continue to underscore not to feel the pressure any which way. We have heard from parents, a mother who's doing a night shift has a family situation where she's not able to be with the kids during the day, or you have families who may not have those 3 laptops to provide for the kids. So I think in all of those cases, the first point of contact, just reaching out to the teachers, and really, really appreciate the quiet work that Mr. Ghosh and his team is doing in making sure that all of this is available. I also am very appreciative of Ms. Parsons' guidelines that she shared with the community. I think that's extremely helpful. And I hope our teachers also are getting a little bit of, are okay with this experience. I think we need to keep them in mind. We heard the dog barking. I hope they feel it's okay for the dog to bark or the cat to walk on the keyboard. I think that's a common sight. I hope as a community and as a big family here, we accept the current situation and are more accepting of each other. And if something is not okay, we talk to one another. So again, thank you, Dr. Kavanaugh, for leading all of this work and bringing this update. So a big shout out to you as well.
Thank you. And I should also thank Jen. She has been, I mean, right there in the thick of it. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, on to our next item, Student Opportunity Act. Dr. Kavanaugh.
Yeah, so as we've said, the commissioner had created 17 recommendations for districts to use. And because Hopkinton is sort of a low money, we didn't get an enormous amount of money from the state. You can fill out the long form or the short form. I've taken a look at the short form. I believe that the date now for Student Opportunity Act will be May 15th. So we'll send this information out to families so that they have an opportunity to review it before we submit our plan. But the two that we are looking at, the first is his number 2, which is research-based early literacy programs in the early elementary grades. And part of the reason that we have chosen that one is that we are noticing some reading deficits with our students. And so if we take a look at our changing demography, we have some students who are low-income students in the 13-14 school year, according to DESE statistics. 2.4% of Hopkinton's 3,461 students were identified as low-income. But if we take a look at the 19-20 school year, we are at 5.4% of our population, and the population has grown to 3,862 as of the last time we posted on DESE. And then English learners have grown from 2013 at 1.2% to 6.2%. And we also know that 13.4% of our students have a first language other than English spoken at home. And our special education rates have always been somewhere around 12.5% to 13.5%. But I will say that Hopkinton prides itself on the services that we offer to students. And so these sort of 3 groups of kids here would be kind of target groups for us. But I mean, obviously we have students all over our elementary schools that we would like to bolster our early literacy programs. So because we have to submit kind of statistics to DESE to help them understand why we have chosen number 2. Number 2 is really for any student who is struggling with any kind of literacy, whether that is reading or writing. Number 7, the one the commissioner offers us, is inclusion and co-teaching for students with disabilities and English learners. As I have said, and you've seen this in my goals for the year, we did have a consultant come in and do a review of Elmwood special education last spring, and then Marathon special education this past fall. And one of the things that she has recommended is just a nice review of specially designed instruction in those buildings. And so we are looking at bolstering that, as well as some of our ESOL instruction, and that is for speakers of other languages. And so that's what we are calling our students, that sometimes we call them ELLs, English learners, sometimes we call them ELLs, English language learners, but these are students of other languages, and we use that term now just because we have so many students who are speaking other languages. I believe that at last count. Yep.
Dr. Kavanaugh, it seems the HCAM live stream is not working. That's a text I just received. Okay. Bob, are you still there? Bob Hamilton, HCAM help needed. Georgette, are you still there? One of the instructions that was given was, if the live streaming is not working, to suspend the meeting until we are able to resolve that, Dr. Kavanaugh. I'm sorry to have interrupted you like that.
Okay.
Georgette, are you there by any chance? Okay.
I am here.
Okay. Are you able to? So I'm hearing multiple versions. There are some who are saying it's not working, and then there's someone saying it is working.
Let's see here.
Is there any way we can just check? Georgette, are you able to do that, please?
I'm checking it right now.
Okay, thank you.
It's showing what's on the screen now.
Okay.
That's what I'm seeing, what's there. Carroll Student Opportunity Act, closing the gap.
So there's no issue there on the streaming?
Doesn't look it.
Okay.
And Bob is still on, okay, it looks, and HCAM is still on.
I wonder if it's got to do with the traffic. If we can get one more confirmation or something from Bob, perhaps we can continue.
Okay,
So I just pulled HCAM's live stream up on YouTube, and it's about a 2-second delay, but it appears that we're live.
Okay, okay. Thank you, Jen. So
Bet.
since we have a few folks confirming, let's continue. Sorry, Dr. Kavanaugh, please do continue.
No, not to worry. I was just finishing up the number 7, with inclusion in co-teaching. And so based on what Commissioner Riley is recommending for, sort of bolstering instruction for students with special needs and for students whose first language is not English and who might be acquiring English in our schools. Those are the two that I am thinking are probably the best choices for closing any gaps that we might have in the Hopkinton Public Schools.
Dr. Kavanaugh, okay, yeah. Are you ready for some questions
Sure.
on
Yep.
that?
Yes.
So any questions from anybody on the Student Opportunity Act? Okay. I just want to highlight the fact which Dr. Kavanaugh spoke about. When Dr. Kavanaugh and I were looking at the 17, there were other areas that emerged, but to what Dr. Kavanaugh said, with the limited aid that we have and the work that needs to be done, this seemed like what would fit in with what we have planned and with the funding that we are expecting. So that's part of the challenge. So hopefully everyone will get to see the 17. And Dr. Kavanaugh, one of the things we had talked about is with the date likely shifting to mid-May, we can request feedback since we wanted community participation in the Student Opportunity Act. That was one of the things that was requested. Is if folks have any thoughts between now and our next meeting at the end of this month, if they can share some of their thoughts, it's welcome. And we probably want to just share this out with everyone so people get an opportunity to take a look at it. This is a very ambitious initiative and a huge pump of funding into public education. So given that, just giving an opportunity for everyone to take a look at what these 17 initiatives are. And it doesn't mean that the others won't be worked on. I think those are some of the things we talked about, Dr. Kavanaugh. It's just that these are the ones we want to highlight and make sure that we are able to show that accountability in the shift in numbers.
Yes, as is true, anytime money comes into your district, you have to sort of justify the ways in which you're using it and then keep data to show that it has either worked, whatever you've implemented, or it hasn't. So I think that these are things that we are planning to work on in our districts, and I think that they are very meaningful.
Great. Amanda, you have a question, please.
Yes, I just could you please remind me what the spending timeline is? When do we have to spend this money and implement these programs?
So I think that these are, when you make this plan, it's sort of a 3-year plan, but I believe that the money that came into us through Chapter 70 is a single year's amount of money. Every year you get Chapter 70 money.
So this we would have to spend by the end of this year?
By the end of June 2021.
Okay.
Like the money hasn't arrived yet is what.
Correct. Okay, thank you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Great. Thank you, Dr. Kavanaugh.
Sure.
You're presenting the next aspect, please.
Yes, and so the last thing that I have added to this presentation is just a little bit of a conversation about April vacation. You know that so many people have reached out to comment on April vacation, and we appreciate that. These are, we keep using the term unprecedented times, but certainly they are. And when all of this started, we thought we might be out of school for 3 days, then we thought a couple of weeks, and now we're starting to see that May 4th may not even be the accurate target date. So when the commissioner offered to allow school districts to change their calendar such that you could eliminate 4 days in April vacation, and those days with remote instruction could count toward your 185. Many districts have taken advantage of that. Just to give you a little bit of my thinking about that, I think that because we started our remote instruction sort of full force on the 6th of April, this past Monday, if we do this for 9 days, because we will still have Good Friday off, I think that to have 4 days then off after that would be, kind of I think a big interruption to the momentum that we've established. Our attendance has been good, teaching and learning has been going well, so I would think that it would not be in our best interest to interrupt teaching and learning at this time. Our kids, another benefit would be able to get out of school on the 17th as opposed to the 23rd. And I think what's nice about that is if we can imagine that the stay home order would be lifted by then, it would be really nice for our kids to be able to enjoy, another 4 days of true summertime as opposed to 4 days of sort of being idle in the house, without any kind of education or that kind of, I guess, interaction between teachers and students. So the last thing that I'll say about this is that kids who are taking AP tests, and this obviously is not the be all end all, but this would afford those kids at least 4 more days of instruction with their teachers too before they went and took the test. Now, naturally, there are other sort of pros and cons to all of this, but I've kind of chosen some of the more salient ones. Across the state, superintendents had created kind of a spreadsheet, and we continued to add pros and cons to it. And after a lot of deliberation, I thought I would put the question out to all of the people who work inside the Hopkinton Public Schools. So the survey that went out was a single question, and it simply stated, regarding April vacation, I would prefer to. 408 people responded to the survey, and you can take a look at that pie chart. It's a simple view, but 22.8% of people would have chosen to keep the vacation intact, leaving the last day of school as June 23rd. 77.2% of the voters said that they would prefer to eliminate the April vacation week, which would change our last day of school from the 23rd to the 17th. So at this time, you know that we have an agenda item to take a look at that tonight. I am recommending that the school committee vote to alter its 1920 calendar to take away the 4 days that would be April 21st to 24th as vacation days and turn those into school days.
Thank you, Dr. Cavanaugh. Any questions, comments from members? Amanda, please.
Is this when we're going to do the vote?
No, it's later in the agenda, but I just wanted to have an opportunity to do that. So I thought it might be easy to just put it right into my report, and we can review some of these things again as you're deliberating. But just because you get the visual here, I thought it might make sense to have a good visual so that people could see the pie chart.
Okay, well, I only had two comments. I have a senior, and since a couple of the concerns were about senior, maybe unique conditions for seniors, I was giving some thought to a potential impact for seniors. And just two things I wanted to share that I had asked Dr. Cavanaugh and Mr. Bishop and got some reassurance on. If you have a senior who may have a virtual accepted students day that is scheduled, a lot of seniors are trying to decide on their plans for next year and have not been able to go to visit their colleges. So it may be the case that there are accepted students days that fall somewhere in April vacation. I do not know. And of course, every college is different. But, my question was, can the student then inform the teachers that they have this conflict like any other college visit? And let the teachers know they'll be absent so that they can take advantage of that. And of course, Dr. Kavanaugh and Mr. Bishop said that would be fine for seniors. Of course, do what you need to do for your planning for college for next year. And I think that is important because it's very difficult for those kids. In many cases, they deferred going to schools because they're far away, and they thought, well, if I get in, then I'll go visit. And now they're kind of stuck. So I feel for the seniors for that reason and many others. But the other thing I had asked about is if we back the end of the school year up to the 17th, and for some reason we decide we want to hold a school event like graduation after that date or in July, is there anything that precludes us from holding a school event outside of the school calendar year? I thought parents might be concerned about that. And there is nothing that prevents us from making plans to honor the seniors when possible after the 17th, if that's when it makes sense to do it. So just want to share that.
Thank you, Amanda. Did anyone else have something to say? Do I see someone?
Yes.
Go ahead, Jen, please.
Yeah. So I just wanted to point out in some of the correspondence that there was a request that, the seniors continue on and the younger students have break. And so let you speak to this more, but this is a district-wide decision, correct?
Yes, it has to be a district-wide decision. And, I understand that there are close to 300 seniors who would love to have, the 4 days. But at the end of the day, I think we have to look at what does this mean for all 3,917 of our kids. And so if there are 3,600 kids who will still be in class long after we've had sort of graduation for our seniors, that last month of school is kind of important for them. So to be able to give to all of our underclassmen and our kids who are K-8, just those 4 days, I think that would be sort of well needed and well deserved after all of the remote instruction, if it ends up going all the way to the end of the year.
Okay. And then the last thing I wanted to say is I did hear from some folks about, that it's just been a very stressful 3 weeks for everyone. And so they were sort of torn between, kind of keeping the momentum going that has been built up over this week and trying to get some downtime to just sort of decompress. And so I absolutely hear their points. But I do really, this pie chart kind of speaks to how it's been playing out in general in conversation too. I think, yes, it's been stressful, but we finally have some momentum going. We finally have some good things in place, and we've only got a week under our belt. So it seems, a little counterproductive to go to school for 9 days and then take a week off and then do what we can to finish up until May 4th or whenever it is. So, if we're having this discussion now, I do support the notion of eliminating April break and going to school. And you get that one Monday anyway. It's a holiday, so it's a long weekend. It's just not a week. So I think it makes good sense. And if folks feel strongly that their families are under a tremendous amount of stress and strain, I think, as you've already alluded to earlier, the district's willing to work with families. So if students are really struggling and they need a break, reach out to the teachers, let them know, reach out to the administrators. And I think the district's really, really welcoming with the way that they've handled and supported the needs of the community.
Yes.
Sorry, Dr. Kavanaugh.
No, that's right. And it might make sense again to interject that, there is the Family First Coronavirus Relief Act, that we have things for our teachers with employee assistance, but it's also important to note that we have things for kids. So if there are kids who are struggling and who need some kind of support, they can always reach out to, any of our building principals or the counselors in our different buildings, because we do have an awful lot of resources and help that we can offer to families.
Thank you, Dr. Kavanaugh. I think, Jen, you said it very well. I first want to welcome our fifth school committee member, Nancy Kavanaugh is here. Hi, Nancy.
Hi there. Thank you. I apologize for being late.
No, not at all. You were doing emergency work. So thank you for the service that you're doing to the community, and thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Jen, I think you said it very well. I also want to acknowledge the fact that 22.8%, that's 23%, that's not a negligible number. So we hear you, we hear the pain. There are moments when I personally want a break. I just want to be able to walk away and not think about anything and just have that time to myself. But, this is the marathon mindset that I guess we need to have. Sometimes it's hard. So just those relief measures that Dr. Kavanaugh talked about, I hope we are able to utilize those. But please, I don't want anyone to think we are not hearing you. We hear you. Please make use and make judgment what works for your family and reach out for resources. Right. Dr. Kavanaugh, one related question I have for you is if a teacher wanted a break, Is there a provision for a substitute teacher during this remote learning phase?
So another thing that we had thought about, as you get to that April vacation time, and I am not an epidemiologist, but there is, a likelihood that there will be increased numbers of people who are affected by the coronavirus then. So we've talked a lot about substitute teaching, and if a teacher has to be out for a day just because the teacher's feeling a little bit unwell. So, for example, there was a teacher yesterday at Elmwood who wasn't able to teach because she wasn't feeling well, and Mrs. Carver and Mr. Demon jumped in and did that particular class setting. But if there was someone who was out for a couple of weeks, we certainly will be getting substitute teachers for those people because we think it's important for teaching and learning to continue. And obviously, sick time that teachers would typically use in the district will be available to them, even if it's remote instruction. So yes.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Kavanaugh. Is this the end of your report?
This is it. I don't have any other slides.
Thank you. I think it was very beautifully put. One other thing, as if you don't have enough to do, you have tons to do in putting all of these reports together. My hope is that if we can somehow make some of these slides available to the community ahead of time, or all of us also, I think it just helps us be better prepared, or ask questions or send any commentary ahead of time, if that's possible at all. Something to look at in the upcoming weeks meetings.
So if it's a Google slide presentation, I can share it with the 5 of you, and you could just sort of watch me update it daily. Things as crazy as it sounds, we know that the Bill 4616 on MCAS and Student Opportunity Act is in the legislature today. So, I continue to update, but I would certainly be, make you privy to what that slide presentation looks like on an ongoing basis.
No, it's understandable. Please, I hope you take it in the right spirit. I know you're adding things to the last minute, and this is not easy, besides all the other things that you're working on.
Yes, thank you.
Great, thank you. We will move on to the next item on the agenda, the chair report. I have approved payroll warrant S20020. The warrant has been included in your packet. I have also approved warrant number 20-052. The warrant has also been included in your packet. I also want to let the school committee members know that the whole warrant signature process now is online, thanks to Ms. Rothermake and Mr. Ghosh and Georgette. So that's how we are doing business at the moment with regard to the warrants. Also, we heard a lot of the communication that we, through the public comment. I was responding to a lot of parents and family members who were reaching out with regard to the April break week. Some of them I've not been able to respond yet, but hopefully you will hear from the committee tonight on the vote directly. Also, in terms of other updates with the SOA aspect, we had that moment when Dr. Kavanaugh and we were worried if we had to meet a deadline on it. I was able to reach MSC and get some guidance. I feel like MSC has been doing a great job in providing updates, and I encourage all school committee members to continue to use them as a resource for any questions on what other districts might be doing, or any kind of guidance at that level. Besides that, I had an opportunity to listen in to the select board meeting earlier this week. I thought that meeting was conducted fabulously, and my hope is that we can try and have the public comment section through via Zoom, where people are able to join in just during the public comment section. I thought that the select board did a great job of that. So I was just trying to see what other committees are doing just for that portion. So we'll have to see how that works and try it out before the next meeting. Also, one of the messages that came out of the select board meeting, there was an update in general and some of the things that Ms. Rothermake talked about earlier with regard to budget. So there is some of that conversation going on at the town level too. Obviously, everyone is waiting for more information, but there are some things that I heard our select board members talk about to hold purses and to spend money as it's your own, and providing some relief to community members. Also, the election date for this year has been pushed. It is now set to June 29th. Hopefully, we will be able to hold that date. Both my term and Jen's term was supposed to end as of mid-May, but of course we get that extended period, and we both offer that we would continue to serve until the elections are ready. I know this is a little bit early. We don't know if we will be able to hold June or if it'll get pushed out. I also know that my term as chair would end mid-May, would have. So I would like to bring it back to the committee to think about it, if we want to have an interim chair or how we want to go about it. I don't want to have any assumptions. We'll just talk through that. Perhaps something that we bring back for next meeting. Besides that, I also had an opportunity to join HCAM. A big shout out to HCAM as always. They've been fabulous. Always, even though we are in this pandemic, they're somehow managing to work and also engage us and make us participate in hangout hours, right? So Dr. Kavanaugh, you alluded to that a little bit earlier. I enjoyed the half hour that I was on the hangout hour. There were two questions. Actually, Bob Hamilton asked one of those questions, and he was asking about how long would it take if we open on May 4th for the schools to come back to normalcy. And of course, I posed that to Dr. Kavanaugh. Dr. Kavanaugh just shared that, we don't know if May 4th will happen, but hopefully, whenever that decision is made, it won't take too long to get back to normalcy. Maybe a week or so to just adjust back to the routines. The other question that was raised was related to the projects that we had requested for summer, the school building extensions and the portable classroom. I asked about that with Dr. Kavanaugh, and the response is that at this point we are moving forward with those projects as planned, and some of those conversations and meeting dialogues are happening. Dr. Kavanaugh, did you want to add anything there?
No, I think, so Mrs. Rothmick and I were actually on a call today with the company that is doing the portables at both Hopkins and Elmwood. So yeah, I think that we seem to be moving ahead well.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Kavanaugh.
And they were saying that they are getting them from a company that builds them in Pennsylvania. And so as long as that company in Pennsylvania is still building our portable classrooms, they should be coming.
Okay, great. Thank you. So the next item on the agenda is liaison reports. Anyone wants to share any liaison reports? Okay, seeing none, we will move on. Office hours. This is my fault. I take ownership. We were talking last time that we will have an office hour online, but I was not able to get all of us organized and offer that up. Part of it was my own situation, just some of the challenges. So if the committee feels ready to take on office hours, we can try and do that before next meeting. Do folks want to do that? How's everyone feeling about it?
I think office hours is a good idea.
Okay. Thank you, Nancy.
I agree.
Okay, thank you. So maybe we'll look for a date and try and get that going. And if I am falling behind on it, may I request one of the members to nudge me or get that organized, please?
I'll be nudging you.
Thank you, Nancy. I like that. Okay, so moving on to the next item on the agenda, new business, April vacation days, April 21st to 24th, 2020. Dr. Kavanaugh.
Okay, so as I had just shared with you on that slide, I think that there are many reasons for us to adjust that calendar and take away the 4 days from April vacation, which would be Tuesday to Friday, April 21st to April 24th. And that would move back the last day of school from the 23rd to the 17th. So I'm officially making a recommendation to the committee to vote to change the calendar.
Does anyone have any questions, comments? I know we talked about it a little bit just before you joined, Nancy. If anyone wants to have any other comments on it.
I just want to reiterate, Mina, your comments about thanking the community for reaching out to us. It was really great to see the various points of view on this. Most people do seem to be in agreement that keeping the momentum is a great idea, that their kids are feeling positive about being able to connect with their classrooms and their teachers. But it was just really so nice to hear from the community and see the community sharing with us their thoughts. So I just want to thank people, and I am in support of this.
That's great. Thank you, Amanda. I feel similarly, like I shared earlier, I feel like there are moments when I want a break. I think more than me, Dr. Kavanaugh would want a break. I would think a lot of our administrators, teachers would want a break. So we appreciate all of you continuing on for the sake of the kids and the momentum that we have built. We hear the 23% who want things a little differently. We hear parents who have talked about the seniors situation. We will work through this, and if there is something specifically we can do for your family, please reach out to the teachers, administrators, Dr. Kavanaugh. Please do that. But I am in full support of the proposal that has been put forth after giving due consideration to all voices.
So are we looking then for a motion to make this move to eliminate the April 21 to 24, 2020 vacation days?
Yes, Nancy.
I would like to make that motion.
Thank you, Nancy.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Meg. And we'll do a roll call vote. Nancy?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
Meg?
Yes.
Amanda?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well, and so that carries. Thank you so much, Dr. Kavanaugh.
Thank you.
Moving on to the next item on the agenda, administrative team vacation days, Dr. Kavanaugh.
Yes, so as you may or may not know, the administrators get a set number of vacation days every year. It is consistent from contract to contract. No one gets any more, no one gets any less. And the rule is typically that an administrator can carry 10 of those days that they have earned over from one fiscal year to the next. So for example, if I had 10 days that I had not used in FY20, I could carry those 10 days over to add to my regular vacation days in FY21. And because of the situation this year where, obviously travel has been very limited, and because we are keeping our schools open through April vacation, so our administrative team really can't use the vacation days that they might have during April. What I am requesting is that instead of moving 10 vacation days over from FY20 to FY21, if an administrator has 5 additional earned days, so we're not giving them any more than they would have earned, but if they have 15 days that they could carry over from FY20 to FY21, I'm asking that the committee vote to include an additional 5 earned days that they would be able to use in the following year.
Thank you, Dr. Kavanaugh. Any comments, questions from committee members?
So I know how hard everybody in the district has been working. It seems like this is a easy, no-brainer way to just show some appreciation for our administrators who have worked so hard. And I think, like Dr. Kavanaugh has said, their ability to take vacations is limited when school is in session, which we will be for a prolonged period of time at this point. So I am in support.
If I could point out one thing, in case people are wondering, does this cost us money? It really doesn't, because these are days they would have earned in FY20, and we're just moving them over to FY21. So there's no cost really attached to this. And we don't provide substitutes when an administrator is out of the district. I just think that maybe for I think maybe to echo Mrs. Kavanaugh, it would really be a very lovely way to say to our administrators, thank you for the countless hours that they are putting in right now.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Kavanaugh. Anyone else? Great. I'm looking for a motion to approve the administrative team to carry an additional 5 earned vacation days from FY20 to FY21.
So moved.
Second,
Motion by Nancy, second by Meg. Roll call vote. Nancy,
Yes.
Jen,
Yes.
Meg,
aye.
Amanda.
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. And so that carries. Thank you, Dr. Kavanaugh, and to each one of our administrative team members for the work that they're doing. Thank you.
Thank you. I know they're going to appreciate it very much.
The next item on the agenda, Lunch Heroes donations, Dr. Kavanaugh.
All right, so I think Mrs. Rothermick in her finance report tonight alluded to this. We do have something called Lunch Heroes, and going into the shutdown period with the coronavirus, we were probably, I don't know, about a little over $1,000 in debt in terms of students not having money to pay for lunches. And the way this works is if a student comes up to the cash register in the lunch line and says to the person there, I don't have money for lunch today, we always give a student a lunch. And then sometimes kids their deficit will accrue over time, and they become sort of deeper and deeper in the hole. So through the Lunch Heroes donation program, we have had some very kind people make donations, and interestingly, those donations total $2,000. So what I'm asking tonight is that the committee accept the grant through Lunch Heroes donations in the amount of $2,000. And this money will not only go to pay off old debt, but it will help us to fund some of the lunches that are in place now. And then going forward, when we have students who are unable to pay for lunch, this will cover that in the future as well. But the only thing that it can be used for is to cover student lunches when kids are unable to pay.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Kavanaugh. Dr. Kavanaugh, one request I have is if you wouldn't mind stopping your screen share, then perhaps folks could see the speakers.
Sure.
Thank you. Does anyone have any comments, thoughts on this?
I just wanted to say I am continually moved by how generous our community is in looking out for each other during some really difficult times right now, and tremendous appreciation for people who have donated for this Lunch Heroes.
Absolutely. I echo what Nancy said. This is fantastic. It's really generous.
Thank you. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, Jen. Dr. Kavanaugh, my hope would also be that, and again, so appreciative of all the people. I know even at the last meeting, we had a similar amount, very generously donated by a group in town, and now many people coming together to make this donation. And I know you were looking for something with regard to what Mr. Scott was trying to do. I think there are needs across the district on various initiatives. My hope is that we can continue to direct folks who are offering help in the direction where we can best use those funds. I think the masks and the visors, I think everyone is being very thoughtful at this time.
Yes, so maybe I can just offer a little bit up about that. Not that it's on the agenda, but Mr. Scott was looking to, one of the students at the high school was looking to set up a Venmo account so that we could continue to make shields. I believe that the group that Mr. Scott is working with has created over 4,000 shields now that have been donated, but they are currently out of the resources to make them, so we capped the Venmo account at $500.
That is excellent. That is excellent.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So looking for a motion to accept the donation for Lunch Heroes in the amount of $2,000.
So moved.
A motion by Nancy, a second by Meg. Roll call vote. Nancy?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
Amanda?
Aye.
Meg?
Aye.
I'm an I as well. So again, thank you very much to all the members for the very generous donation here. The next item on the agenda, Social Emotional Learning Grant, Dr. Kavanaugh.
Pooja Mehta, who works in Senate President Spilka's office, let us know that the town of Hopkinton was slated to receive a grant in the amount of $100,000. We got that a couple of months ago, and I'm really just looking for the school committee to accept the $100,000 grant for social, emotional, and cultural learning opportunities for our teachers, and that can involve not only professional learning, but also resources and materials.
Great. Any questions from committee members, thoughts?
This is great.
Great. Dr. Kavanaugh, I just had one question. If you can comment a little bit about the culturally proficient social emotional learning aspect of it. Is that different from social emotional learning?
Well, I think it's probably a little bit different, right? Sometimes when we talk about social emotional learning, it's a very big umbrella. But when we add in the culturally proficient pieces, I think that's kind of important for our community because, if you looked at my slide on the student opportunity grant, you can see that we are a rapidly changing community. We have so many students now who are students who have socioeconomic needs, or students who speak other languages, or students who have come to us from other cultures and other countries. And to grow our proficiency of all of our educators and administrators, it's really important. And when we were told that we were getting this money, Mrs. Parson kind of really immersed herself in that and was able to come up with an awful lot of opportunities for us to grow our repertoires. And hopefully we're going to be able to achieve some of what we hoped to do with it because we have to spend this grant before June 30th. And as we all know, the workshops are just simply drying up.
Right. Thank you for providing that context, Dr. Kavanaugh, and thank you to Ms. Parson for immersing herself in this work. This is the part that I find challenging, that we have such a short time, and this is a sizable amount of money for a good cause, and where our teachers and everybody is looking at a bunch of things. I mean, in some ways it's timely, because I do think social emotional supports are needed. I think cultural proficiency, especially when you are working remotely, that also brings certain challenges. My hope is that things will stabilize in the upcoming weeks and this money will be put to good use. And with deep gratitude, I would like to request a motion to accept the $100,000 grant for social emotional learning for FY20.
So moved.
Motion by Nancy, a second. I think I saw lip movement, but I couldn't hear it.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Nancy, a second by Meg. We'll do a roll call. Nancy?
Yes.
Amanda?
Aye.
Jen?
Yes.
Meg?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well, and so that carries. Thank you, Dr. Kavanaugh. The next item on the agenda, revision to teacher evaluation language spring 2020. Dr. Kavanaugh.
Sure. So I'm going to actually ask the committee to skip this one. We had been working with the Teachers Association, hopefully to come up with some language to streamline the teacher evaluation process this spring. The reason we were kind of hoping to do that, we left school on March 10th, and typically what will happen is most of the evaluation documents and meetings, all of those things take place between, obviously now and when the school year would end. But I'm still sort of in negotiations with the Teachers Association about this. I really want to, kind of make this process go a whole lot more smoothly, given the fact that they are very wrapped up now in remote instruction and working really hard. So hopefully we'll be able to come to some kind of an agreement. There is on Monday the 13th some advice coming from MASS. So I'm going to have to put that one on pause, please.
Okay. Is there anything that you need from the committee when you are in these negotiations?
No, the only other negotiations that we've had with them, and it's been very successful, was just the changes of working conditions that have come about as a result of the remote instruction. And so I think that the union president, the HTA president, Mrs. Abate, will be putting that out to her people. And I'm hoping that the committee would be also willing to sign the agreement. It's a very simple agreement that just talks about how instruction is delivered remotely as opposed to in our brick and mortar classrooms.
Okay, that's great. If you need any support whatsoever from the school committee members, we are here for you.
Thank you.
Obviously our teachers are working hard, and hopefully whatever work that is that comes out of it, you will take all of that into account. I don't think I even need to say that to you.
No, we definitely want to do what's in the best interest of our teachers at this point. Yes.
Absolutely. Okay, great. Thank you so much, Dr. Kavanaugh.
Mhm.
Moving on to the next item on the agenda, old business policy EEAA transportation services, second reading. Dr. Kavanaugh.
All right. So we had talked about this one last time, and I think, we had gone through the transportation policy, and we did so because we had, had some concerns from folks in the community. But I think we also wanted to take a careful look at that policy relative to the budget that we are creating right now. One of the things, and I would say this is the most significant or substantial change that we're making to that policy, it's really about having one pickup spot in the morning and one drop off spot in the afternoon. And it doesn't matter if those are two different spots, but we want to streamline things so that we aren't holding seats for children on buses. So if I ride bus 5 every morning, I ride bus 5 every morning. If I ride bus 7 every afternoon, I ride bus 7 every afternoon. I don't ride 5 some mornings, 7 some mornings, 5 some afternoons, 7 some afternoons, because essentially what ends up happening is we have empty seats driving around town. And given our financial status, it just makes great sense for us to try to restrict the number of seats that a student is able to access. We have also said that if you are a student who stays at the Elmwood School 3 days a week because you go to Kidsborough, the other 2 days a week, that can certainly be your home bus in the afternoon. So this is our second reading, and Mrs. Fargiano and Dr. Devlin, if you have things that you would like to add to this, please do, because you are part of the working group.
So I know we were both waiting to let the other person go. The policy working group is filled with very polite people. So I think based on the feedback that we've heard from the community, we may want to just take one more look at what we've written. But I think, as you said, this is essentially the same policy that we had in place, with the big change being about drop-off locations and pickup locations. I know that safety has come up many times throughout the conversation, throughout the course of the conversations that we've been having about this topic. And we keep going back and forth about whether or not safety is something that can be something defined by the school committee, or is it so situationally specific that it needs to be left in the hands of the administration, because it's going to be a case-by-case basis. And so that's what I think is safe for my child is going to be different than what someone else thinks is safe for their child, to a certain extent. So I think, I don't know if I'm comfortable voting on it tonight. I think we need to have some more conversation about it. But I also think that it's a very difficult issue to come to terms with and make everyone happy. And so that's the other piece of it. The folks that don't like what we've written really don't like what we've written. And the folks that have no problem with what we've written, we haven't heard from. So I think this is a tricky situation. And I want to acknowledge it and let everyone know that we're not thinking about that, but also there's it's so multifaceted, and we have to find a fine line between policy and procedure. And procedure is not something that falls under the purview of the school committee. And so I think that's the tricky piece, is where is the line? So Amanda, I'll let you say your piece too.
Yeah, I think first of all, I just want to say that this policy development is by definition an open process. We cannot do this in a vacuum. We are required to put this out to the community and hear community feedback, and it is a collaborative process in that regard. In that we do put this out for multiple readings, and I'm very appreciative of the feedback that we got tonight and through other channels about the policy. So I want to say thank you to the people that we heard from. I do not feel comfortable voting on this tonight in light of some of the feedback. I think for me, as Jen mentioned, the biggest sort of place where we stumble is this intersection of policy and procedure. And I do like the policy that we put together. I think we've cleaned up quite a bit, taking out procedure and sort of cleaning up and clearly stating, I think it's clear, clearly stating, hopefully it is, what it is that we offer for transportation services. The one reason why I'd like to go back to the subgroup and have a more detailed conversation is that following some communication from the community, I took a look at, it was Northborough, I think, for example, their handling of the intersection of policy and procedure. And what they have done is put a little sort of a statement in their policy that says on an annual basis, the school committee will review the procedure manual from transportation. It's kind of a simple statement, and Northborough has a procedure manual, which it probably doesn't say much more than what our transportation website says as our procedure manual of sorts, but it puts it in one document and it puts on its annual calendar an opportunity for school committee to ask questions and weigh in on procedure. So I don't know if that's a good fit for us or not, but it raises enough questions for me about maybe other ways that we could handle the intersection that I'd like to take it back to subcommittee and look at that and see if there's any way that we can learn from that other district that was raised and maybe address that intersection a little more clearly. I kind of was looking at the Northborough thing, like we review the HHS and HMS handbooks on an annual basis. It's a similar kind of procedural document that the school committee can then at least on an annual basis look at, ask questions of, and make sure that it's reflecting the community needs that have maybe changed over the year. So those are my only thoughts there.
Thank you,
Can I add
Amanda.
something?
Yeah, please do, Meg.
So in light of the parents' comments and thinking about this last time, I started to look at the state laws, and I looked at not only Section 71A of the Massachusetts legislature, but I also looked at the Department of Education transportation policies. And so I'm so glad you guys recommended that we table or postpone this discussion, because I discovered some very interesting language. I mean, the DOE policy says that authorized bus stops are located at convenient intervals in places with the utmost safety allowed by road conditions. They feel very comfortable including language about safety in their policy. So I think we need to return to that and consider that. The first statement of the general policy of the Department of Education is that it is the task of the school committee to govern any areas not covered by specific declarational policy. So that puts us in an interesting and awkward position that I think we need to talk about too in terms of policy and procedure. Also in that general policy, it says bus stops should be located only where there are adequate clear visions in each direction. And even more interesting to me is something that the state legislator says about the school committee must designate the locations for the erection of highway safety stations for children awaiting a school bus. And a highway is a public road. So I think we have some legal pieces to look at. I think we have a lot to review and consider before we make any definitive decisions about this policy.
Nancy, are you looking to say something?
So I just not to jump off of the previous comments, because I think tabling it makes good sense as well, but I am curious. I know we received a few emails regarding some of the feedback we had when we brought this up it came up in public comment previously. I didn't see any comments and wondered if you or anyone else had received any comments on the major change that's in this policy regarding the having the one bus in the morning and one bus in the afternoon.
So Nancy, I have not received anything. However, I do have some questions related to that. So I will state what I said even last time we had this. I had concerns about not using the word safety. I do understand the procedure aspect of it and how much we want to leave to the procedure aspect. I think definition of safety could be left in terms of defining, how are we coming up with consolidation. I think we do have to do some consolidation, right? For various factors, various reasons. But just giving some transparency into that, I think might help folks understand, what are some of those rules that are being applied there. And I think the very fact that we have a appeals process, I think it's an excellent thing that we have an appeals process for the very reason that if something is seeming off, let's go through the appeals process and relook at it, right? So that is also, I think, is a good way to capture those kinds of situations. So I still feel that as a policy, I would want to say that we have safe bus stops, but definition of safety and how that is reached is left to the implementation part. With regard to the fact that we will only have one stop in the evening, Nancy, I don't know if that has caught necessarily the attention of everybody. But perhaps, through the conversation here, that does happen. The related question I had on that was that, which was presented, I think, as a happy medium, that if on the same bus route, if the kids want to get off, so let's say a kid is on bus 28 and they typically get off at a certain house, but they want to get off at a friend's house for a play date on a particular day, they can send a note to the school and make that happen. And I wondered if any feedback was sought from our principals, because I remember that being a pain point for them a couple of years ago, saying the number of notes that they were getting and the last minute changes and some of the pain around that. I know the policy committee works hard on all of this. This is not easy, and transportation is always challenging. So I hope that is another aspect that is considered. If the workflow around how this application goes in, are the principals okay with that? How would all of that happen? That is taken into consideration. The third thing that I had brought up last time is around, the fact that we let kids, as long as they're kindergarten, only up to kindergarten, is the need for a parent or guardian's presence to receive the child. And I want to share one particular experience when we had an early release or something had happened in one of the elementary schools, and the kids were let out early, and more than 15 minutes beforehand, they came home on a very, very cold day. Right. As long as you're living in a community, the kids may have that setup in place where they're able to go to another family if the parent is not present. But I can't imagine a first grader who arrives on a cold day early, and if there is no parent guardian present, them trying to figure this out. And I understand that this might be an anomaly. I just want the policy committee to please think about it when bringing that back, if you can take that into consideration. I think it's a difficult balance. On one level, you want to leave it to parents, yet there are instances when it's hard. First graders and kindergartners is not much of a difference, really.
Mina, I'll just speak a little bit to your point, because we do have several situations where, if a parent is usually there for a first grader, a third grader, or even a fourth, fifth grader, and the parent is not there, and that's an anomaly, the bus driver will call in dispatch and we will contact the school. So we wouldn't just let the child off. And there are times where a child doesn't feel comfortable because their parent is not there. And so we do also contact the school and circle the child back. So, you know, there are instances where, of course, things happen. Parents get caught in traffic, whatever the circumstances, but the driver is very well aware. So I'm not sure that's really a policy thing, but just so you know, it's situational awareness, and we're always on top of that.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Rothermick. And I do hope that, you know, with this being your area and your area of expertise, I hope you're able to weigh in on some of these conversations as well. Thank you for speaking up. All right, are there any other comments and thoughts? So we're going to bring this back. That's the decision for now. Okay, great. Thank you so much, guys. So the next item on the agenda that we have is policy EEAEC, student conduct on school buses, second reading. Dr. Kavanaugh.
Sure. So that one we talked about last time as well. And I think the major change on that policy was we really just wanted to highlight the fact for parents that if children are having difficulty on the bus, the person in terms of discipline that you would reach out to in each school is the assistant principal. So we have added language to the policy to kind of highlight that for parents. One of the things that we were hearing from parents is that they really weren't sure whom they should reach out to if they found their kids were having difficulty on the school bus, but it's most assuredly the assistant principal in each of our schools.
Okay. Any questions, comments, thoughts from members? Nancy.
I am just thinking there does not seem to be feedback from the community that relates specifically to this policy. And I'm wondering if it's something that you feel like we could move forward with the policies working group's blessing to make a motion on.
Meg, are you looking to say something?
Nope.
Okay. How about the policy committee, subcommittee?
I'll go. You want?
Please do, Amanda.
Yeah, Nancy, I think your point is well taken. I think this is a bit of a standalone policy that talks about student conduct. It's important to state, in particular, and we didn't change this, but if you do pay a fee for the bus and your conduct does not meet the conduct standards, it's possible that you will not be allowed to ride the bus. So we need to put this in writing, but there really were no changes, and it doesn't really tie specifically to the questions and issues we have with EEAA. So I would be okay with voting on this one.
Right. Jen, did you have anything else to add to that?
I echo Amanda's statement, and I think one of our primary changes on here was making the point person is if there was a concern on the bus. So I think we were able to work that into the policy, and I think, you know, we sent it to you because we feel good about what is written at this stage in that policy.
Okay, great. Looking for a motion to approve policy EEAEC, student conduct on school buses.
So moved.
Second.
A second by Meg. We'll do a roll call vote. Nancy?
Yes.
Amanda?
Aye.
Jen?
Yes.
Meg?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well, and so that carries. The next item on the agenda, school committee procedure for superintendent evaluation. Ms. Fargiano.
Okay, I think we went through this document in detail last time, so I'll spare you that fun. Again, there were not too many significant changes, but I do want to bring your attention to the first paragraph under overview. Do we need to screen share this, or are we okay with talking through it?
I think you can. I think screen share is a good idea if you can do that, so you can highlight only the ones which have changed from last time.
Do you want me to screen share, Dr. Kavanaugh, or did you want to do it?
No, if you're ready to do that, that's fine.
Well, we'll find out.
Is it easy? I have the.
I think I'm good. Let's see.
Okay.
How am I doing?
Yep, you're right there.
Okay. So this is the policy that, again, we reviewed in detail. The first paragraph, the overview, we put in a sentence at the end related to the time horizon for the evaluation. And we defined that the following captures the procedure and timelines for an annual review. The decision to conduct a biannual review for experienced superintendents will rest with the evaluating committee. Modifications to the timelines and there's a little typo there, sorry, and to any procedures will be defined at the time of goal setting. So it's allowing the evaluating committee to determine the planning horizon. Is it 1 year or 2 years? And that's something that we had talked about last week, or last meeting rather. Another thing that we talked about was, I think Meg brought up the idea of bringing in community feedback. And Mina had done some research on this, shared a few documents with me as the sort of procedure working group. And from what we've read, any consideration of an appropriate way to do that would require a lot of thought and planning, and we wouldn't want to rush into that based on the guidelines from other documents. And I think Mina probably would be very happy to share those reference documents for others. So at this point, and Mina, please jump in, I believe that we are not recommending any language specific to community feedback in the procedure. We would rather rely on our use of evidence from Dr. Kavanaugh to bring in whatever data, if that's committee members' feedback or whatever, identify that through Dr. Kavanaugh and have her bring back that evidence to support her goals as necessary. Mina, did you want to comment?
Yeah, I think, I feel that what we have put together and kind of identified as procedures, I think it's it's in great shape the way it is, just streamlining our process as it currently exists, introducing something like 360-degree reviews, as Amanda said, and those were my thoughts as well. That should be done thoughtfully, and we have to have readiness as a committee, as a community, to do it in a thoughtful manner. I certainly hope that in the future that is done, because I think ultimately reviews are a beneficial aspect. Many times there are negative connotations associated with it, but I think reviews are a time for reflection, a reflection on strengths, on growth areas, and you can get that feedback. As it's easy to receive that feedback as long as it's done in a thoughtful manner, and that requires leading the review in a thoughtful manner. So I think we are still very early in streamlining some of these processes. My hope is that in future years, a 360-degree review is considered by a future school committee. But for now, I think this is a very good process. This is my thought, of course. And I think we can continue to seek feedback through Dr. Kavanaugh on various aspects, as Amanda spoke to earlier. I'm actually very proud of the shape that this procedure has taken, and Amanda has done tremendous amount of work here. So just patting ourselves on the back here.
What questions do we have? Can we vote on this, do you think, or do you have more questions? I think I lost Nancy.
I think perhaps just the video.
Okay.
How about, does anyone have any questions, thoughts with regard to timelines? This is the general timeline, not necessarily the timeline for this year. Okay, is Meg saying something? Okay, so maybe before we take a motion on this particular item as a general procedure, just wondering with regard to the timeline for Dr. Kavanaugh's review for this year. One of the things that I strongly feel is that this whole pandemic and this move to online education is a goal that just emerged for Dr. Kavanaugh. And she has been working on it relentlessly. So I feel that we should include some of the commentary and some of her work around this area and give time to include that. But I would like to hear directly from Dr. Kavanaugh what her thoughts are with regard to timelines. on her goals and submission of her evidence.
Sure, and I know we had talked about this a little bit during the week. So I think, given the change, I think, in the way we're delivering instruction and some of the, kind of 180 approaches that we've had to take here and go in an absolutely different direction, I would be happy to move things out a month. So I think originally we had talked about submitting all of this evidence on the 16th of April so that we would be ready for the April 30th meeting. But if we wanted to push that out a little bit to a May meeting, that would be fine. I would be happy about that.
Okay, so perhaps sometime mid-May is what we can target and go from there.
Sure. Yes, that sounds great. I mean, just as
Okay.
an anomaly this year. Absolutely.
That's right.
Mhm.
Okay, so
So-
sorry.
So I think, again, just kind of playing out the implementation of our new procedure before we accept it, just to see if it feels right. What that would mean is that we pick a date in mid-May for Dr. Kavanaugh to present her evidence to us, and then we would schedule a dedicated meeting as a school committee to work on a composite review, to bring our individual reviews forward, and then discuss any anomalies or anything we want to work out in the formation of our composite review. That would be an additional separate dedicated meeting, I believe. Is that correct? Mina, is that how you understand it?
Yes.
Okay. So if we like the procedure and we think that's the right way to go, then we would look to pick a date toward the end of May where we have a dedicated session to create the composite review.
Right. And I think, Amanda, what might help is for Dr. Kavanaugh to just think about it a little bit, and at the next school committee meeting, perhaps give a more definitive time frame. And we all can also look at the calendar. I think we also have to look at June meetings, the annual town meeting. There are a bunch of things to look at, and we can zero in on when we want to have the initial conversation. So let's try and target the next meeting for some definitive dates for this year's review. But for the procedure overall, let's move forward with what we have.
So just asking the committee before we vote on the procedure, does that, now that we're talking real terms about this year, does that feel like the right process?
And I'm seeing some head shakes.
I guess we'll try it and see, right?
It's hard when you say, hey, let's implement this new idea, and then we got to change it in the first 2 weeks of implementation. But that's the way it goes this year. I think that's just the reality we're living in. Because I do like the dedicated meeting idea. I think that's helpful, and it probably will take a long time. I do, and I do like the idea of pushing it back at this point, especially if Dr. Kavanaugh is comfortable with it, because the last month has had an enormous impact on teaching and learning and administration. So I think if that's something that she would feel comfortable factoring in, I think it's only gonna, shine an even brighter light on how well our organization as a whole is run. So I think, I'm for it.
Great.
I agree with Jen.
Thank you. Thank you, Nancy.
And nice work putting all of this together. I know it's been a lengthy, been a great deal of work and a lengthy process, but I am hopeful that it will help us run a smoother process going forward.
We'll see. We may be back at this procedure in a couple months.
Thank you, Nancy. We needed to hear that patting on the back. Okay, having said that, we don't have a motion listed out, but I'm going to request a motion to approve the procedure for superintendent evaluation as presented tonight.
So moved.
A motion by Jen,
Second.
second by Meg. Roll call vote. Nancy,
Yes.
Amanda,
Aye.
Jen,
Yes.
Meg.
Aye.
I'm an aye as well, and so that carries. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, future agenda items. Okay, if there are none at this time, always feel free to email to me, Dr. Kavanaugh, on any ideas, and Nancy, of course. Time for our second public comment. Nancy, I wonder if there was anything you may have received since this evening.
I have not received anything since before our meeting started.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Nancy. My hope is at the next meeting, we'll try and figure out Zoom participation for public comment, but we'll see how that we can make that work. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, items by consensus. Dr. Kavanaugh.
Okay, as superintendent, I recommend that the school committee approve the items by consensus as outlined in the agenda.
Looking for a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Nancy,
Second,
second by Meg. Roll call vote. Nancy,
Yes.
Jen,
Yes.
Amanda,
Aye.
Meg.
aye.
I'm an aye as well, and so that carries. I think it's Meg's favorite item next on the agenda.
So moved.
Looking for a motion for adjournment, and Meg moved it. And looking for a second.
Second.
Second by Nancy. Roll call vote. Nancy,
Yes.
Meg,
Aye.
Amanda,
Yes.
Jen.
Yes.
I'm a yes as well, and so that carries. Thank you everyone for yet another session, Zoom session of our school committee meeting. Our next meeting will be held on April 30th, 2020, 7 p.m. via Zoom. And thank you very much to HCAM and Bob Hamilton for making this possible. Have a wonderful night, happy Easter, and hang in there.
Good night.
Over and out.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.